You know, there's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hey everybody, this is Justin Beahm with Reverend Entertainment, and you are listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Hour, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I am your host, John the Bod, aka the Bodfather, and as always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. But before I bring on my awesome guest for this evening, please get out to the YouTube page and subscribe to BODS Mayhem Hour. Click the subscription button and a notification bell. Just please, because we got a lot of great stuff that I know a lot of you guys and gals are going to like. Trust me, we got a lot of stuff. We got some giveaways coming up, and I know you guys want to be a part of that. And plus, at the time of this interview, I'm at 923 subs on YouTube, so let's get me over that 1,000 mark. So that way I can start, doing my thing, as I say. Doing my thing. But anyway, I want to introduce my guest this evening, Mr. Justin Beahm, who is a producer, director, and writer, and owner of Reverend Entertainment, which produces content for Shout Factory, Paramount Pictures, Scream Factory, Anchor Bay, Vinegar Syndrome, Scorpion, Music Box Films, and other studios and distribution companies. Justin is also the director of At the Waterfront, After the Social, which is the legacy of Sleepaway Camp, Sleigh Bells Ring, the story of Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 and 2, and those are awesome movies. Silent Nights are awesome movies. I don't care what anybody says. Those are good ones. You get Santa Claus killing people. That's a good one in my book, folks. Ricky, today, You Can't Kill the Boogeyman, which is that's a story about Halloween that we're going to be talking about too, because I'm a huge, huge Halloween fan. Michael Myers is the man. I don't care. And also horror with a twist and that crazy witchcraft. So, man, you've done all kinds of things, Justin. Welcome to the podcast, and glad to have you on here.
Well, thanks for reaching out, John. I appreciate it very much. I'm excited to have a chat with you tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, how you been doing through all this pandemic, man? I mean, I know you've got your company that you're doing, putting out these 4K movies, but how you been doing specifically through all this?
It's honestly, it's been an unexpectedly fertile time for the work that I do, and it really made things. It changed a lot in the realm of production. I think it forced the hands of a lot of people on many sides of the business, from journalism through to actual film production. It also opened people up to remote work, and that's normalized that. So it's no longer strange that I live in Iowa and I go back and forth to Los Angeles all the time, where before people used to say, like, Iowa, what? Now no one bats an eye. It's changed that in a really wonderful way. And I think that's opened opportunities for me, frankly. But I'm grateful that no one in my immediate family had really got COVID bad. I think just about all of us have had it at one point or another. But we all pulled through pretty well, knocking on wood as I say that. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the pandemic not hurting me, and in a way it turned into, like I said, unexpectedly a pretty good time for my business in terms of growth.
And you hit the nail on the head right there. So many people that didn't do podcasts are podcasting it up right now. You know, I've been doing this for years, and I'm like, what are y'all doing? Stop. This is what I do.
Well, that's exciting, though, isn't it? Because it's and it really is the kind of thing that's perfect for stay at home, because people wanted to communicate. They still wanted to share stories. They still wanted to connect. and that provided a perfect avenue to do so. And with the proliferation of all these different streaming platforms that are carrying the podcast now, and the different services that can help disseminate that out to the all those different networks and things, it kind of makes sense to me that this world of podcasting would have exploded during this time. Oh yeah, and I love it. I like seeing different podcasts out there, and I like seeing different interviews. And one interview one podcaster may left out something that another podcaster picks up on and runs with, and it's like, oh, that's cool. And you see everything that they pick and come out. I think it's so cool. And just the different styles of podcasts too. Not just, wrestling or paranormal or music like I do. Those are the three ones I do. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, but I hated that we had to go through what we went through with that stupid pandemic, man. Yeah. Well, even shows like Busted Open, for example, off of Sirius XM, they even converted their show into condensed form down to podcasting. And so even the shows that can exist successfully outside the realm of streaming are choosing to go there as, if nothing else, as sort of a sidecar to their main shows. But I think that's really, it's cool, and it's been very exciting to see. And the diversity you're talking about is really what keeps me captivated by the whole thing. I every day I love those alerts popping up, new episode available, and I hop right into my iTunes or Apple, whatever, podcasts, and I always have something playing, always. I do mine every Tuesday and Thursday, and sometimes Saturday. They drop every Tuesday, Thursday, and sometimes Saturday. So I'm always interviewing, editing, doing all this stuff. It's fun to do, but man, when that work comes in, it's like, oh wow, jeez. Yeah, got to have the labor of love, is what I say. Got to have it, or you don't. Plain and simple. So I'm going to talk about this for just a little bit. You mentioned you're in Iowa. You are close, probably out there to the Villisca Axe Murder House for paranormal, man, and horror stuff's up our alley. So, have you been there? Do you want to go there? Oh wow, I have. Okay. Many years ago, a number of years ago, I took the tour. I went down there and went to when they had the museum. I don't know if they still do, but they had the Axe Murder Museum in downtown, and then they took you over to the house and gave the tour. And then a couple years ago, I was interviewed for a documentary, and actually it was two things on the same day now that I remember. One of them was for the Iowa Film Commission, like a promotional piece, and the other thing was for this documentary on horror movies. And the documentary producers had asked where I wanted to be shot. And I thought, well, I want something that speaks to Iowa. I want something that's going to catch the eye of the keen horror fans out there who might be into that paranormal stuff. And the true crime buffs as well. So I thought, what would be better than being interviewed in the attic of the Villisca house? And so pulled a few strings, and next thing you know, there's me and a film crew tucked away up in the attic, and I'm talking horror in one of the most unbelievable paranormal locations in the United States. It was wild. It was wild. And folks, if you don't know the backstory of this, I suggest you all go out and just look up the Villisca Axe Murder House. There's documentaries on YouTube about it, and it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre how this happened. I mean, and I was going to tell you, there was a killer that basically was in the house, and nobody knew it. And they think they know who done it, but they really can't say, pinpoint. Still to this day, it's still an open code case, which is crazy. Yeah, there's a new book that actually just came out on it. It's called Devil Incarnate. It's by Ed Epperly, who is a historian. And my friends actually made a documentary on it. It's called Villisca Living with a Mystery. Oh, and it's all about the axe murder. So if you are interested in that case, look up Villisca Living with a Mystery. It's a fantastic documentary. They made it back in the 90s, so it's a little dated at this point. But Ed Epperly is featured prominently in it as the premier historian on the case, and Ed has been working for decades on this book. It's massive, and I think it's called Evil Incarnate or Devil Incarnate, but it just came out, and I can't recommend that highly enough. There's been quite a bit written about the case. There's so many theories on who did it and who was involved, but I recommend Ed's book, and there's also this great book that is relevant and it's called The Man from the Train. And I can't remember the gentleman who wrote it, but there was, if you don't mind this aside here.
Oh, it's fine.
What this was in Villisca, this axe murder occurred, and no one knows who did it, but many theorize it could have been this minister who came to town. It could have been an inside job with some people associated with the guy whose family got killed. But there is a theory out there that it was a transient who came into town off the railroad, sort of slept in their above their barn overnight, and then hid in their house while they were at church and murdered them in their sleep, which did occur, but all that was left behind is this axe and some other bizarre things, like he put sheets over all of the mirrors in the house, and he had closed the shades and barricaded the doors and all these other things. And there was other weirder stuff too. But anyway, this book, The Man from the Train, is this, it was actually a sports reporter, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but he and his daughter spent, 5 or 6 years or something researching and connecting all of these cases throughout the Midwest and up even into the West Coast a little bit, where they all share these telltale signs: axe murder, near a railroad, the chimney taken off of the oil lamps, which was one of the things in the Villisca case, for example. These little elements that line up. And in some of these cases, some people actually survived the person breaking in their house, and they would tell their story, but no one at that time, these police departments weren't talking to each other. They weren't communicating, so they were just kind of these disparate stories. And what Bill James, that's the author, Bill James, The Man from the Train. And anyway, Bill James and his daughter start putting the pieces together, and they realize there's this path. And all I'm going to say about it is that it's a fascinating read, and it does involve Villisca, and it points to a couple people that they think may have been responsible for this stuff. So if you're a true crime buff, even if you don't know of the Villisca story, you can read this one. It's a fascinating true crime read by a guy who's a really good writer.
And just like Justin said, man, it's like you got everything into one. Horror, you got paranormal, you've got crime. It's everything into one. And the reason why I brought that up, and I know you mentioned just because of Iowa, but we may be coming out there and filming for our paranormal series. So you're welcome to come with us, man. I'll let you know when we come out there.
Oh, I would love to. That'd be a blast. I'm a huge fan of ghost hunters. That's one of the regular things I have on throughout my day. Yeah. Ghost adventures a little bit here and there, but I'm more a little old school with the ghost hunters approach, less intense. And but anyway, please do reach out to me, and we'll stay in touch, and I would love to be a part of that.
For sure, man. I want to know about this and I like what you guys have done with these older style movies and even the newer style movies. I mean, you guys do these 4K Blu-rays. You did Halloween Resurrection, Child's Play 1 through 3, and oh man, Toby Hooper's The Funhouse. I thought when I saw that, I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What made you guys want to say, okay, let's take these old movies and newer movies and let's spiff them up, man. Let's do the 4K now. Let's do it and put them out there.
The company who you're talking about who did all those is Shout Factory, and under their Scream Factory shingle. And Shout Factory is a company that really spans so many different genres, from animation to children's stuff, documentary, classic television, into horror. And in 2012, they launched the Scream Factory sub-label, which is dedicated to horror, run by Jeff Nelson and Cliff McMillan. That's when I came on board with them, was at that time. What they simply do is what any of us would do. They have a wish list of movies, and they, through their team, try to track down the rights to them and the licensing, and sometimes it takes a long time. Like earlier this year, I did Alligator 1 and 2. We had started talking about Alligator back in 2013. I mean, It was one of the very first titles that we wanted, but there were things in the system and the process with that film that prevented it from being able to be licensed until this year. And finally it happened. Wow. And so I just went nuts on the special features, and then we got part 2, and same thing. Great stories behind all of it. But really, same thing with Paramount. These things are led by passionate fans who want to give back to the people who love these movies and who have been carrying their legacy and the word of mouth, sharing DVDs and Blu-rays over the years, but giving them that new contemporary transfer and audio mix. And then you blend in the stuff that I do, which is all the documentary, like the special features, commentaries, and everything. Then you get in the story behind the scenes as well. And we just try to make it as all-inclusive a package every time as we can. And that's no different from any label to label. It's same with Shout, same with Paramount, same with Vinegar or Arrow or whoever it might be. You know, fans serving fans.
I seen you guys release, and when I saw it, I was like, I got to grab this up. It was the Nightmare on Elm Street box set, and I was like, oh wow. If I'm not mistaken, it was either Nightmare on box. It was either Nightmare.
Are you thinking of Halloween or Friday the 13th? We did those two.
No, I know what it was now. It was Friday the 13th. That's what it was. So now I've got the DVD, the regular DVD, and I was like, oh man, it's like now I have to go get the 4K. It's like every time I look around, I got to upgrade. I got got the VHS and DVD, and now I got to get this other DVD, the Blu-ray and all this stuff. And I was like, just stop. But there's so much stuff that gets added to each one. You've got to have it. It's like I got to get this.
Yeah, and TVs are different.
That's true.
For a lot of folks, people want to. Many of us have these 4K TVs, and the chance to put stuff on it that looks and sounds amazing. I'll never forget putting in The Shining 4K restoration for the first time and just being floored, or Jaws, for example. Even the Jaws Blu-ray absolutely blew me away, seeing the cleanup and restoration that had been done on that. These are not films that I've had anything to do with, as much as I adore them. But I think and this is what I always tell people, is still hold on to your old versions, because not everything gets ported forward. Not every special feature is licensed in a way that it can move along with newer releases. So you got to hold on to those older versions. And I have this Dawn of the Dead box set from Anchor Bay from years ago, the ultimate box that has like 5 discs in it, and it has the international cut, the U.S. cut. It has the Diary of the Dead documentary, and then a bunch of special features and all this. A great booklet. It is DVD. It's not Blu-ray, but I'm totally content with this package, and I know the odds of all these elements coming together again in a release are pretty slim. I'm holding on to that, and that's one that I'll always cherish and hold nearby. Hold on to it.
I'm happy I bought the Halloween box set that came out a couple years ago. Well, several years ago, I should say. Mm-hmm. I'm happy with that. I mean, I'm like a little fat man in a candy store locked inside with all the candy.
Well, that's something no one ever thought could happen. Same thing with Friday the 13th. And that's the power of Jeff and Cliff at Shout, that they kind of make these miracles happen that really blow us all away. Man, when I got the call on both of those, I was in disbelief, because you have complicated situations with different production companies, different distribution companies involved. That Friday box just got ahead of all this lawsuit stuff that's going on now.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's just remarkable how they make some of this stuff happen. It blows me away.
So we're going to go way back in the life of little Justin here. And when did the love for writing come into play for you? When did that start happening? When did you develop that love for writing, man?
That's when I was really little. It has been a thing I've loved to do as long as I can remember. In school, it was always my favorite subject. I loved, assign me an essay. I would just love it. I made my own I used to write and then photocopy and sell stories to kids in school. I had my own little side newspaper for a while, and man, it's been such a passion of mine. I don't know why. I'm also a musician. I'm a drummer, and the rhythm of words is something that really fascinates me, and I have this real romance with words and how they move and how paragraphs are structured rhythmically. And this also comes into play with film, with editing. It's a similar kind of a thing. It's finding the beat, finding the heartbeat and the pulse of a piece, and it has to feel right and assemble the right way. And all that goes back to when I was writing when I was younger. And I really can't remember a time in my life when I wasn't scribbling something down in a journal or writing stories about whatever, or poetry, or when I was little, or whatever it was.
When you're writing, do you feel that you're creating your own art, but just in words? Your own movie in words?
I think it plays that way. But what's interesting about it is that when I'm writing, it's a path of discovery for me. So I will create a character. I'll come up with a character and put that character in a situation, and I really let that character and their experiences and the rocks that they're turning over, that's what informs everything that comes after. I don't I'm not an outliner, so I don't think of beats that I want to happen down the way. I really want it to guide me. It's almost like writing a song with people. When you have people in a room, different instruments, everyone's pitching in on something, and you could be like, oh, that bass line, do that again. And then that gives you something you never would have thought of in a million years. So now you're on this path, and then someone else comes in with something, and it's this very organic exploration. And that's what I try to do with the writing. Although most of what I write is nonfiction, especially in my professional life, in the realm of fiction when I'm writing. I just like to let the characters lead me around, and they introduce me to the world that they're in. It's not me force-feeding anything onto them, if that makes sense.
So, well, while you were younger, though, like that, did you actually come up with, writing your own scripts or writing your own movie possibly at that time? Did you come up with stuff like, well, one day I'm going to try to do this? And did that ever happen possibly?
A little bit, not writing so much. My friends and I would rent a VHS camcorder from the grocery store here, and we would make movies on weekends. And but it wasn't anything that was written out, planned, and I wasn't some auteur walking in like, okay, guys, this is what we're doing today, and we need to whatever. It was just us being goofballs and borrowing a gorilla suit from somebody, and the next thing you know, we make a little miniature of a spaceship flying to the basketball that's the moon, and whatever it was. But there's nothing structured. I mean, no, I wasn't writing anything on that level. And scripts, that's something that didn't come till much later in terms of even an understanding of the structure of them or anything like that. So, but I think all writing, in a way, it's telling the story that you're seeing unfold in your head. And that is a cinematic experience, especially if you've been watching movies all your life. You can't help but see things and experience them that way when you're creating.
Now, like I said, man, you've done a lot of things in your life, but when did you get your foot in the door, so to speak, to write for like Fangoria? You wrote for Fangoria too, if I'm not mistaken. And
yeah,
things
for a
like
long
that. When
time,
did you, how did you get your foot in the door to start doing that? How did that happen?
At the time, I was assistant editor for some newspapers run out of Farmer City, Illinois. I was doing reporting on local news and things like that. And that led to me starting to write for some regional music magazines. And I had always been a real lover of Fango. Fango and Famous Monsters were the two magazines that really were my sort of like my lighthouse, helping show the way into the genre and into film as a whole, really. And so I always dreamed of that. And there was a point where there's a bit of a longer story to it, but the short version is I answered an ad in a newspaper for extras wanted for a movie that was filming in West Branch, Iowa. The movie was called Collapse, a zombie movie. And I just figured, what the heck? I'm not an actor. I've had no aspirations to act or anything like that. But I thought it'd be fun to be in a movie. And so I show up in West Branch, Iowa, and here's this thing in this movie, full-fledged, real production, not just some rinky-dink thing like my buddies and I when we were kids. And Linnea Quigley was there.
Oh.
Now, Linnea, I've been a fan of all my life. Big fan of Night of the Demons, Return of the Living Dead and everything. I mean, she's an icon for a million reasons, and I love them all. And I met her there, and we bonded over being vegan. Over lunch, we sat together, and then I said, I would love to interview you for something, even though I had no idea what that something would be. And what it became, we exchanged information, and what it became was a retrospective on Night of the Demons 1 through 3. So the original 3 Night of the Demons pictures. Have you seen those movies? I take it.
Yes, I did. Yes, I have.
Kevin Tenney, I mean, especially that original, is just such a classic.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, well, I might as well go all in on this. And I didn't have any outlet for this article. It was just something I thought, well, I've met Linnea. I want an excuse to talk to her. And so I started with her, and then it just grew into the next person and the next person. Anyway, at some point in this process, I learned that there was going to be a transition in the editor chair at Fango from Tony Timpone to Chris Alexander out of Toronto. And Chris and I had connected somehow through some channels at some point. And I wrote to Chris and I said, hey man, I heard that you're taking over Fango. I would love the chance to write for the magazine. Can I send you something? And he's like, how did you find out I was going to be editor? That's not news that's known yet, but yes. And once the dust settles, I would love it. And I fully expected not to hear back from him again because he would have had a million things going on. And then one day I get this email. He's like, hey, man, so yeah, send me what you've got. And I sent this monstrosity. It was this Night of the Demons article is so bloated. It still hasn't been published anywhere because it's just this massive monster. It's just way too much. But anyway, Chris liked it and said, what else have you got? And I kind of lied and said I had this list of things. And then he chose like 4 or 5 of them. All right, here's what I want next. And I was like, all right. So I was off to the races, and that's how it began. But really, it was just me taking that moment to reach out to him, which is something I advocate for everyone. If you're interested in being part of something, a publishing entity like Fango, Rue Morgue, wherever, reach out to them and say, hey, where do I send a pitch and some ideas, or where do I send my piece so you can take a look at what I do? Because you never know when that door will open. And it's not going to open on its own. Someone has to go up there and start knocking. And if it's not you, you can count on not getting on those pages.
Yeah.
So that's how it all began.
All they can either do is say yes or no. I mean, take a chance. That's what I tell people.
It's a hunt. And this goes back to that Wayne Gretzky saying, and this is kind of a cliche, I know, at this point, but Wayne Gretzky once famously said, you miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Exactly.
And that's so true.
That's the truth. That is the truth. And people knock me are like, you're not going to get this interview. Well, if I don't, I don't. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and not try. That's for sure. And I've been told no. It's not going to be the last time I'm going to be told no. But
sure,
it's not from lack of trying. That's for damn sure. I got to know this, man. How crucial was your local library for you, which stocked all the Crestwood House Monster Series books for you, man? How crucial was that?
Jesus. That was everything to me. That was everything. And I could I'm looking at them right now. I've been collecting them ever since I was a kid, trying to get all of them. But those books were instrumental for me. Even before I was seeing the movies in most cases, I was reading these things. So I knew Frankenstein. I knew the Wolfman, even before I hit play on the tape eventually when I saw it. And it was such a unique thing because really what they are, it's breaking the script from the film down into about a 50-page treatment with photos like stills or promotional images from the movies, black and white, and it's just the story being presented. There's no take on it. There's no one's review. There's not even behind-the-scenes elements or anything. It's literally just that. And it was so cool because I was then able to marry that with going through the library and reading about these different makeup effects guys, reading about James Whale, reading about Todd Browning, and all the people who were making these things. It's just one thing leads to another, and it's the same thing with music. When you like you mentioned earlier, we were talking about music, and you talked about any number of those bands you mentioned, like Danzig. Well, that's going to lead you to Sam Hain. The song titles are probably going to lead you to some horror movies you haven't seen before, but Sam Hain might lead you back to the Misfits. Now, if you start looking at the Misfits, that splinters off into Eerie Vaughn's solo. I mean, there's all these different things, and we love to connect those dots, and that was me as a kid. And so the long answer is I spent countless hours, countless days, riding my bike over to that library, sitting there with a pile of books, poring over them. And one of my most treasured photos I have of me and my grandmother, who I miss dearly, is her on Christmas Eve reading to me and my brother on the floor in my parents' room because we needed to sleep. Like Santa might have been out in the living room, doing his thing. So instead of having her read The Night Before Christmas, she's reading me the King Kong Crestwood House book.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm just enthralled. And it's one of my favorite pictures from when I was little, and that was very much my world. And those books in that library, man, that's everything. That was everything.
So you're just like me, probably like when you got your first taste of horror movies and, the horror books and stuff, you found that there was horror music out there.
Oh.
He was like, oh, God, and like you said, it's like for everybody, the very first band normally that they find out about horror movies, Misfits. That's it. And then you go from the Misfits, like you said, to Eerie Vaughn. You go to Sam Hain. And God, man, Sam Hain was a beast to be reckoned with. And they still are today, in my opinion. Those albums still stand true to this day, in my opinion.
Yeah, Danzig had 3 distinct four if you think about the more contemporary stuff, but he really had these 3 bands that are a perfect evolution to his style. Like Sam Hain is a perfect blend of the Misfits elements and what became the drier sound of Danzig. Yep. So it's this exciting, and it's so thrilling to encounter an artist and then fall in love with all the stuff around them and all the things that they had done before. And horror stuff, you look at Skinny Puppy, they're using sound bites from all kinds of different horror movies in their music. And then you read about who Ogre was influenced by, and then that leads to this, to this, to this. And I love that it's like these characters, like what we talked about a minute ago. When I'm writing something, this character is going to lead me wherever they're going to lead me. Yeah. This song I'm hitting play on is going to lead me down who knows what paths. But I'm so fucking invested and excited to be taking that journey, and I'm 100% open to wherever it leads. Yeah, totally.
And there's a band right now that's out there killing it, and I'm glad that the way they do it is Ice Nine Kills. That band is just amazing, and I got to see them live, and I like what those guys are doing. And it's crazy to think that they came, well, the lead singer came from a ska/punk band to doing what he's doing now. It's kind of like, what? But everybody changes, man.
I think they're all horror guys, aren't they? I know that a lot of people, like their music videos, have a lot of folks from the horror scene associated with them. So, yeah, back to, I don't know, there's so many great elements that are poured into so many artists, especially that borrow from horror once in a while. It's a reliably cool thing to explore, and it's neat when there's little things that blend unlikely sources. Like, do you remember Repo, the Genetic Opera?
No, I have no.
It was this insane musical that actually Ogre from Skinny Puppy's in it, but it's a wild movie that has so many different horror people and elements. But it's just so strange. You have to check it out to see it. But of all people, Paris Hilton is in it, and she plays this kind of goth girl, and who she's one of those interviews that happened for me years later that I never, on House of Wax, last year we did House of Wax, and she was kind enough to grant an interview, which was really surprising. So you just never know who's going to be involved and where it's going to lead you. And when you find that person, right, it gives extra, when you're a horror fan, there's a little bit of extra credibility there when you're like, yeah, you kind of own this. I think it's cool that you don't shy away from your roots in the genre. You still talk about it with adoration and consideration, which I think speaks very well of those people who keep that mentality about it, and don't feel above it or something.
I want to throw out one more album here, then we'll move on. If people who like just instrumental stuff, check out Danzig's Black Aria orchestra stuff. That is some mean stuff right there, and it's really trippy, just good stuff. And it shocks me that there's so many big movie stars got their starting roles in horror movies, man.
Sure. Yeah.
And a lot of them don't even want to acknowledge that they were. And I'm like, dude, put me in a horror movie and I'd become a movie star. I want to bounce that thing all over the place. I was like, I was in that movie.
Yeah.
I was in there.
It's frustrating especially those that have been open, like, Paul Rudd. He was in Halloween 6, Curse of Michael Myers. And he's never had a bad thing to say about that film. And when it comes up, it's not like he goes, oh, there's this dirty thing. And it's kind of a running joke on some shows that he was a part of it. But he's always said, no, that was important for me at that moment in his career. And when I was back working with the Halloween franchise for those years, and I wanted so badly to bring him in on some release or an interview or being part of something, it's like his people are standing in the way. But I know if I could get to him,
he'd do it, yeah.
He would be completely on board. And I find this not just with big celebrities, but people of all walks and trades who are associated with these movies. Sometimes I get the door shut on me, and I'm like, yeah, but I know they are proud of this film. So I try to find another road to get to them. And 100% of the time when I do, and they ask, well, did you try I'll say, I've been trying for a while to get to you. Oh, who did you talk to? Oh, I actually spoke to your agent. Well, what did they say? Because I never heard from them. And then I tell them, and they're like, are you kidding me? So this could have not happened? And I'm like, yeah. It's always surprising when that happens, but there's a little bit of like when they hear about it and that they're probably going to say something to that person who shut the door on their behalf, it's a little bit of a reward. Like, all right,
well, or
hopefully
either
that
tell
person
you
gets theirs a little bit,
or either they tell you, here's my email address and just text me or whatever. That happens too a lot, which I think is awesome. And I tell you another guy who, man, I would love to sit down with and just talk about what he did in this movie, and the lady who I'm going to mention here too, which people's going to say no, they didn't. Yes, they did. Reese Witherspoon and Matthew McConaughey in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think was it part
Next Generation.
Yeah, they were in that one, and some of my friends I've told her like, he's not in that movie. It's like, yes, he is. Yes, he is. You need to go watch it. Just go watch it. Reese Witherspoon's in there, and he's in there. And so,
but that's an example of a case where these two and their lawyers fought like hell to keep that movie from being released. That's why when it was done, it sat on a shelf for a couple years, because they were just arriving after that movie was done. It was all, post was finished, and they were starting to get the ball rolling on distribution, and their lawyers were trying everything within their power to make sure this thing never saw the light of day. And it did eventually come out, obviously, but it was in a little bit of a trimmed version, and they were trying to have them downplay the involvement of these leads. It's like, you can't downplay this.
No.
They just happened to accidentally have, at that moment, two of the biggest stars in the world. Like, I think Dazed and Confused had just come out from Matthew, and, she was exploding. And then here's this little movie with Leatherface and Drag on the VHS box. They look at wait, who's in? Are you kidding me? And I love to talk about Matthew McConaughey's robot leg in that movie. I think it's one of the greatest things and most ridiculous things in horror cinema, his radio-controlled leg that he has. And when Shout did that disc, I didn't work on it, but I did pitch without laughing or a smile. I said, you guys really need to do a commentary with that robot leg. Just imagine someone like asking questions and it goes, that I thought would be super amusing, but
it'd been awesome. It'd been awesome too if the leg come back and went, all right.
All right. That would have been so funny. Oh man.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. So 2014, man, you took a hiatus after being just burnt out from doing too much for too long at a time. Did you think you were absolutely done? Did you feel like, at some point I'm going to find my way back to doing everything? Was you just at the end, was you just like, I got a break?
I didn't know, because I had been through some very frustrating experiences. And I kind of just got burned out, and I just wanted to sort of recenter myself on my son and take a 9-to-5, clear my head, and not be juggling so much all the time for a minute. But it was never an intention to permanently walk away. But at that point, I was kind of directionless. I was aimless. And I maintained the good relationships that I had. I kept the doors open with Shout Factory and these others. But really, it was such a different world for me at that point than it is like right now, for example, in a lot of ways. And I really just felt like I needed to be grounded around my son, and just, not that I wasn't already devoting as much time as I could to him, but I had spent a lot of the previous year away in California from him, and that really just killed me. And so it was like, no, I need to recenter myself. And he's why I stay in Iowa, because his mom has a good gig. We're great co-parents, and we, I won't want to be anywhere but here until he's graduated and off to do his thing in the world. So to your question, I really wasn't sure what the future was going to hold for me, but I was confident that if I wanted to put my toe back in the water, that I would probably be able to find some outlet, whether it was in writing or back on the film side. But I knew it wasn't going to be exactly like it was when I left. I knew that because there were a couple things that I was involved with prior to that I knew I wasn't going to be returning to. So it was an interesting time for me.
And man, all of us who have our passions, eventually you're going to get burnt out. I mean, if you don't, there's something wrong. Eventually, sometimes you just have to like detox yourself. You have to get away and just, just break down and be gone for a while. And then sometimes, man, that passion comes back 1,000% more.
I never lost my love for it. It wasn't a matter of me saying like, well, I can't be near this.
Yeah.
It was more like it was a time thing, and it was like I used the term recenter, and I really felt like I had lost myself in a lot of ways in the couple of years prior, in a lot of different ways. And I needed to do some soul searching, and my son has always been my conduit to grounding and to gaining perspective or regaining perspective on whatever might be at hand. And so really I was, unbeknownst to him, I was relying on him. Here's that thing again where he's guiding me. And I've learned, of course, more from him over the years, the 11 years he's been alive, than I could have ever dreamed in an entire lifetime. But at that time especially, someday I'll hope that I can explain it to him in a way that makes sense to him.
Oh, yeah.
But he really was a guide for me. And it's not, I never got lost in like drugs and alcohol. It was never anything like that.
Right.
It was just a matter of feeling like I was just in this fog in something that felt kind of unhealthy to me at the time, creatively and work-wise. I was having to fight for a lot of things that I thought I shouldn't have had to fight for, and he offered me that kind of grounding that I needed in that moment. So, yeah.
Are you still wanting to put out your book, The History of the Halloween Series? Are you still setting on that, or what's going on with that possibly?
That's one that word got out about that when it was underway, back when I was with Trancas, and I only wanted to do an official book. So the short version of this answer is no, that book won't happen with me, because I don't want to do something unofficial. I would only want it to be officially sanctioned and with full cooperation from Trancas, for example, because of all the incredible behind-the-scenes stuff and elements that they have that no one else in the world would. And I think that to do it right is to do it on an official basis. Not that unofficial books can't do it right. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, I could take that to a publisher and find a home for it easily. But then there's all these piecemeal licensing things with images and all the rest of this stuff that I just wouldn't want to deal with. And above all that, if you're going to do it right. And for me, in my perspective, I would, for something as rich as the Halloween franchise that has so much, and now all these new movies, it just keeps going on and on. The fan base is so devout and well-read, well-traveled within this world, you cannot phone it in on something like that. So it would be a disservice to fans if I tried to do it some other way. So that's and I do have archives of all these interviews, and I've done a few things with some of them, but in large, I haven't done much with most of it yet. But it won't be in that book form, at least.
We're going to keep on this subject because Halloween is my favorite franchise of all time. Sorry, folks, that's my favorite one. But are you happy with the ending to part 3 to this new one that just come out, or? Because I've heard so much, and it absolutely kills me that people are like, I wouldn't waste my money on this. Oh, it's the best movie I ever saw in my life. But I'm like, look, folks, just stop. Just let people go watch it.
Don't you think that's great, though? I think when something's polarizing, I think that's valuable. I think it's valuable to the fan base to have these discussions because it helps people reevaluate their love for something.
That's
and whether
true.
they're being challenged by the movie because they don't like it, or whether it took them down a path that they were refreshingly surprised by in a positive way. Engaging in this back and forth, although some of it's really ugly, but that's kind of the nature of the internet. I think it's a good thing. And regardless of how one or another feels about it, they're engaging in that discussion is kind of what matters. And
It's true.
the thing dropped 80% in its second week.
Yeah.
So the box office story has been written on that film, and yet we're weeks later now, and I'm asked about it literally every day, numerous times from a variety of people, because everyone is just so... Everyone's trying to figure it out themselves. How do I feel about this? And these discussions help them find whatever answers they're looking for, just as much as giving insight into whoever they're conversing with. So I think it's great that this thing has been so polarizing. I do. What do you think about it? I'm curious what your thoughts are on it.
I haven't got to watch part 3 yet, and I just kind of want to do a binge on 1, 2, and 3 when it comes out on DVD, if it comes out on DVD, which it should. And that's what I want to do. I want to sit down and binge watch them. I've watched 1, and I loved part 1. I absolutely loved part 1. And then I didn't watch 2 or 3 because I wanted to wait. I was like, I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to binge watch them. So...
Oh my gosh.
But I just don't want to see Michael Myers in a electric wheelchair going around with a knife. You know what I mean? It's like, when do you? I don't know. It's kind of hard to kill this off. I mean, they could do it in the right way, but can you really kill it off though? I mean, because it could be passed down to another person who has the same traits as Michael. You know. It could carry on.
There's a lot of things that can happen. I don't know how you've managed to not watch those movies I assume things have to have been spoiled for you by now, because everyone's talking so openly about all these 3.
I watched part 1, and I loved part 1. Part 2, some of my friends have told me about same thing. Some loved it, some hated it. Part 3, same thing. Some loved it, some hated it. So I'm just gonna watch both of them when they come out. Like I said. When I get them and just binge watch all of them, 1 through 3, and have me a little day of Halloween again, you know. And then
you have to let me know after you do that. I would love to talk with you and hear what your thoughts are on the whole thing, because it's such a unique experience. These 3.
Oh yeah, they're all different ones, and I'm glad that Lori's kind of like wanting Michael to bring it on. She's wanting this fight, man. She's wanting to take us, be done with this. And I think that's the cool part. Is like she's not backing away. She's not like, oh, I'm scared of my brother. She's like, come at me, bro. You know what I mean? So she wants that fight, and that's what I like about it. I was like, that's awesome. But I wish it was I don't know. A friend of mine said the ending was crazy, which I was like, like you said, man, everybody's going to have different opinions about it. But I wanted to see something of the end of like, Laurie versus Michael, and just a big fight. Just not like stupid fight. I mean a true gory fight. That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
That's like, go back to the old Halloween, John Carpenter, the original one. Big old school fight, something like that. I want to see old stuff in it, but things change. We're in a new era of life now.
Well, I think that the ending of H2O was wonderful.
That was a good fight scene.
If they would have just left it there, that honestly would have been a pretty badass way for Laurie to go out with Michael. Of course, this franchise, as you said a minute ago, it can be passed on. It's not going to be over. It will continue in some way, and I'm guaranteeing you that it will continue. But this finding a satisfactory ending at this point there's not going to be any way to please even the majority of people. That just simply couldn't happen. But because everyone spent decades investing in this, and people who love the franchise are passionate about it, like I said a little bit ago. And so, how do you ever bring suitable resolution to millions of fans around the world who each have an individual relationship with the story that resonates in however many ways, personal and otherwise? I just don't think it's possible. So David Gordon Green was taking on a real mammoth mission with these movies, and then trying to bring things to a resolution at the end, to put a period at the end of that sentence. Man, that's a big hill. It's a big mountain to scale, for sure. And I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on it once you see it.
Not just that one, Justin. Just think about this, man. Hulu's version of Pinhead, Hellraiser.
Yeah.
You know, you've got this woman who is is Hellraiser now. And these new Cenobites look awesome. I mean, they look badass. And I think this is cool. And I don't care if people like this or not. I think it's cool that you see a woman now as Hellraiser, because that torch has been passed from the original Hellraiser. You know, like, okay, he's done whatever happened to him. Now there's a formation of the woman who's taken over Hellraiser, you know? I like that. I think it's pretty awesome. And her makeup, everything in this is awesome. So they did a really good job, I think.
Yeah, and why not continue to explore these universes that we invest in? Why not create new stories within that framework? There's going to be some comfort food elements to them, but I love when they're exploring new territory, and it doesn't always work, but you have to applaud the inventiveness of taking something that has such a fan base and so many sequels, so many films prior. Now, whether we're talking Hellraiser or Halloween or anything else, and when you take a different approach to it, it's not an easy move, and you know that you're going to be entering into something sensitive with some very devoted fans. So I admire that just to start with, and then when you do something as creative as what they did with her in the new one. Her look, I mean, Doug Bradley, who was the original Pinhead, he even said, "My gosh, this is brilliant. This is really something special, people."
He sure did.
Yeah.
He praised this.
What greater seal of approval do you need on a new Hellraiser than to have Doug Bradley go, "Yes, you've got it right."
That's exactly right. To me, that's like passing on the torch and giving his approval and be like, "You may travel." You know, it's like you did it.
Yeah.
I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think that we'll ever see another slasher like Jason or Freddy or Michael or Leatherface or anybody like that? I mean, do you think that we'll ever see another slasher that just takes over everything?
I do.
Like, whoa.
Yeah, I think everyone is really honestly right now ready for that next one. And there have been some people who have tried to bring characters to the forefront, like with the Hatchet films or with Terrifier and stuff. But what made these other icons towering icons, the Freddys, the Jasons, and the Michaels, is that each one of them is so distinctly unique, and especially unique for their time. And there are elements that can feed an enduring franchise built into their mythology. So none of them are too convoluted where you can't make another film. They all have some pretty simple elements to them. But Nightmare on Elm Street is the one of these that's probably the most underexplored, just because they haven't made a movie in so long. But it's the one that's endlessly diverse in what you can do with how much of it exists in the dream realm and things like that. So that's what the next icon's going to be. It's going to be something that I think that shows up where it is rich enough in its mythology that it can feed many films or series or however they want to approach it, whether it's a streaming thing or theatrical or whatever, on any of these different platforms. But it needs to be something that isn't derivative and that doesn't feel like something else. And that's what Terrifier has working against it. As much as people love it and how gory the new one is and all of that, there are so many clown movies, and that's not to say there can't be great clown movies, because there are. Yeah. But having and Terrifier may go on for 50 more sequels, but is Art going to be a Jason or a Freddy? I don't know that he's built the same way, cut from a similar cloth in terms of legacy and endurance, if that makes sense, because it is a clown killing people. I just think people are ready for it, and that's why Terrifier is doing so well at the box office. As we're recording this, it's doing... What's funny, Halloween, when it came out in 1978, didn't have anything behind it. It was an independently made and released film, and it was word of mouth as it started to spread across the country that really led to it getting booked in theater after theater. And it was up against legitimate studio films and besting them at the box office. And people are like, what? How did this happen? And so this mythology was born, the legend was established, and that has built a franchise on it. Now, in 2022, Halloween is kind of the bloated studio picture. Not that it's Blumhouse, but it's also Blumhouse. And, that's the one at the box office that's kind of like hobbling around, while this little independent film made for $150,000 about a killer clown is what everybody's talking about. And who would have thought that was going to happen? Who would have seen that? That's like a great, like you mentioned wrestling earlier, that's like a great run-in on a match from someone legitimately unexpected. And you're like, what? He's here? I had no clue. And they come in, and then they show the old guys kind of how it's done. And that's an exciting thing to see, whether you love Terrifier or not. I mean, I think it's just amazing what it's doing. And it's reinforcing the stability and the reliability of horror at the box office and in all forms of entertainment, but also proving that a little movie still can do what Halloween did in 1978. It's still possible, and they're doing it at the box office of all places. It's just amazing. It's been on Blu-ray and DVD around the world for months now, and it's still slaying at the box office. So kudos to everyone involved. And
I forgot to throw in Leatherface, folks. For the people who said I didn't throw in Leatherface, I threw in Leatherface. I forgot. Sorry. He's iconic too, so I don't want to leave him out there.
Yeah, well, we touched on Next Generation a little bit, but Leatherface is another one that. Yeah, I mean, it's that series has been started and stopped and started and stopped, kind of like Halloween, but that's a good thing because you can kind of pick and choose whichever storylines you want to revisit and invest in. So I think that's great.
Are you working on anything right now, man? What do you got up your sleeve that you want to eventually start working on, possibly, that you got in your back pocket that's just there? Like, I want to save this for later.
Oh, I'm on like 15, 20 titles between now and next summer. But I don't think any of which have been really announced. There are some upcoming, like Nightmare Man just came out, Rolf Konevsky's Nightmare Man, through Ronin Flicks, actually today, or yesterday as we're recording. Piranha in 4K from Shout Factory. I have my previous commentary with Roger Corman on that, plus a new interview with Joe Dante on that one. Blue Hawaii from Paramount comes out also in November, and The Company of Wolves also in November from Shout. And then Carrie in 4K from Shout Factory in this box set kind of a thing. Those are the ones that have been announced, but man, it's always like juggling to use chainsaws. It's like juggling running chainsaws all the time. And I currently have about 20 of them cycling around the room at all times, and it's insane. It's totally insane.
Justin, I want to thank you for taking time out to do this interview with me, man. It means a lot to me as a big horror fan. So thank you, sir, so much.
No, thank you for having me on. It's been great. Sorry about my long-winded answers. That's kind of how I have a hard time reeling it in because I just enjoy these conversations so much. So thank you.
You're fine. How can folks stay in touch with you, find out what you're doing, even contact you? How can they do that? Say hi or whatever, just pick your brain about horror movies or whatever.
You can, on all social media, it's Justin Beahm, Beahm. And also justinbeahm.com or reverendentertainment.com take you to the same place. And on my site, it has all of the news about upcoming releases and when special features are announced and past releases, links to things, previews, and inside information on some of the releases. So there's a lot of things to dig around with on there. And there's a newsletter you can sign up for on the website too. Whenever I post, it'll shoot you an email right away that says whatever. Piranha announced on 4K from Shout Factory with whatever special features. So that's a really good way to keep up. But don't be shy on social media. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I would love to chat and love to talk shop anytime.
Before I let you go, good sir, would you care to do a promo for my show?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Hey, everybody, this is Justin Beahm with Reverend Entertainment, and you are listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour. Please get out and check out our Facebook page. It has a podcast link and that YouTube link that you definitely are going to go subscribe to. Not if, but go. Go subscribe to, hit the notification bell, and get me over 1,000 subs, guys. Come on. I support anybody and everybody. And please get out and check out Justin Beahm, all of his stuff that he's coming out with all these directorial stuff, these commentaries that he's doing in these movies. Please get out and check all this out and drop him a line. You know, if you have any questions about horror movies, he'll talk it with you. So, again, Justin, thank you so much, and look forward to having you back on again, sir.
My pleasure, John. Thank you so much, and happy Halloween.
Yes, sir. Happy Halloween to you, too.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.